And, every year around this time, I like to pick up a good baseball book just to get
you through the winter.
Yeah, get me through the winter and start looking forward to
find one this
Yankee
year?
baseball. You know what? It found me, as a matter of fact, because last few years we had Harvey Arrington come in studio when he wrote Mr. Yogi, Driving Mr. Yogi. We had Jane Levy on when she wrote the Mickey Mantle book. A friend of mine, Jack Waslin, sends me a book a couple of months back. And he says, Mike, I think you might enjoy this. And Jack was a radio host, did sports talk back in New Orleans a number of years ago, but a great guy. So he sends me the book, and it's when the Yankees were on the Fritz.
On the Fritz.
That's a hint right there. Right. So I open the book, and it says, to Mike, the Mess Show is the best show on cable. Your friend, Fritz Peterson. The Mess is the acronym for Mike's Entertainment and Sports Show. So Fritz Peterson, number 19. In the 9 years as a Yankee pitcher, Fritz Peterson had 109 and 106 record with a 3.10 ERA. Between 69 and 72, Peterson was one of the most successful left-handed pitchers in all of baseball. Only Mike Cuellar, Mickey Lolich, and Dave McNally won more games in the American League than Peterson during those 4 years.
You could use a lefty this year.
You ain't kidding.
Is he in shape?
You're right. He was a 20-game winner, American League All-Star. Let's welcome him to the show. Fritz Peterson, are you with us?
I'm with you guys. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
That's wonderful.
Fritz, hey, I wish I had that trading card from 1969. Fritz, thank you for personalizing the book. When I opened to the first page, it says this is about how one of the best right-handed, left-handed pitching combinations in baseball from '66 to '74, Mel Stottlemyre and Fritz Peterson, made it through the entire quote-unquote Horace Clarke era without winning a pennant. And you know what, Fritz? That's kind of a theme through the whole book. And you know what? You suffered through your career because you hit the one kind of dark era of the Yankees. And unfortunately, I suffered with you because I was a 10-year-old boy that I was a diehard Yankee fan, and I'm watching you on TV. But you know what? It seems like the theme is the frustration of that. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, absolutely. I used to be a Blackhawk hockey team fan when I was your age, back then at 10 years old. And, man, you just lived and died with any game you could ever see, and they didn't televise all of them or anything then. But I felt the agony then. I guess I was in for it in my own time frame.
Well, let's put it this way. My first memory was really Mickey Mantle. 66, sure. That was your first year, and 67 when he hits the 500th home run on Mother's Day. Those was great memories. But at the same time, they were lean years because Mickey was on his last leg, and I remember even fighting back tears listening on a transistor radio because in '68 the Yankee fans were booing him because he could barely stand up. I think people are going to find this eye-opening and very interesting. Fritz Peterson, in the history of the old Yankee Stadium, had the lowest ERA of anyone. We had Fritz Peterson of any Yankee, 2.52, as you could see.
1 year?
Career.
Wow.
After that, Whitey Ford, 2.58. The great Mariano Rivera. Then your teammate Mel Stottlemyre, Righetti, Guidry, Gomez, Ruffing, Ali Reynolds. Some big names. And you're right on the top of it there, Fritz. So we want to give you a big round of applause.
Very impressive.
Thank you very much. My attorney happened to be at the game when they announced that in, I think it was 2008, when the stadium had played their last game there. The Yankees played their last game there. And he called me because he was at the game, and I couldn't believe it because I didn't even know they kept those stats at that time. And then he said, guess who was had the lowest ERA in the history of Yankee Stadium? I said, well, Whitey or Mal? He said, no, it was you. So that was one of those moments in life.
Well, Fritz, just as you said in the opening of the book, you were one of the bright spots, certainly of the pitching staff, yourself and Mel Stottlemyre. And again, for our fans that don't go back that far, your first year in '66, they finished in last place. Unheard of for the Yankees. But yourself, I mean, you had a good year, as a rookie, and a 3.31 ERA that year, and then you follow it up after that with a 3.47 ERA. 68, I mean, that told us that there were really good things to come. 1968, a 2.63 ERA for the whole season, and you even bested that in 69 with a 2.55 ERA. And really, your best season, I think we would all agree, was 1970 when you were 20-11 with a 2.90. I mean, we'll talk about how the money's changed in in baseball, but my goodness, being a free agent off of that year would have been quite lucrative.
Oh, that would have been beautiful.
A little bit. We have a graphic of you, Roy White, and Bobby Mercer, and you mentioned that in the book you speak about certain players and maybe defensive liabilities or deficiencies and all that. Just tell us what you would like to share with us, because you have a new edition of the book that was just out last week.
Right. As I kept seeing Roy over the last couple of years, and I wrote the book about 3 years ago and finished it 2 years ago in the middle. And I was just telling it like I saw it, and I like to do that. I like people who tell the truth. And that's how I saw it, that Roy, I mean, everybody knew he had a bad arm, but I said things like he played with his back on left field so he wouldn't have to go back for a fly ball, and we got a lot of balls that fell in because of that, and blah, blah, blah. And over the last couple of years, I've talked to Roy, and I found out the truth about those things and why he did that. And in essence, he told me that if I would have asked him to play short, he said he would have played right behind the shortstop if I wanted. And he meant it, and I could tell that. And, I hold myself responsible for that. And then Roy told me why he did that, because he had a lot of ground to cover there with Mantle in center and stuff like that. And and left field, left center are so big in Yankee Stadium. I, all those years, looked at it as a negative, and that he just wanted to take it easy out there. But after talking to him a lot, I decided to revise the book even, because it wasn't right, and I like things to be true.
I remember that vividly, that he really would go through the whole season without making an error, but he was a very conservative ball player. I mean, he would literally catch the ball with two hands, and he would almost like genuflect. You remember that? Like he would almost go down on one knee when he caught the ball just to secure it. Remember that, Fritz?
Yeah, I think he's a Catholic. No, Roy, I look at him a whole differently now, especially after we've talked. And he's had a lot of people call him and say, "Hey, what's this guy writing about?" And I agree now with the people thinking that, because Roy, every time I see him now on replays, he's hitting a home run, winning me a game, and making a big catch somewhere where he had to run 500 feet for. I'm just kidding, but he was a really good player and a really great person.
Yeah, that is for sure. This is what Goose Gossage said when he was talking about Bryce Harper, and I'm quoting, "What does the kid know? He doesn't know squat about the game. He's got no respect for it. He's making millions of freaking dollars. That's great. I'm happy for all the players and all the money they're making, because it's hard-earned by all the players that came before these guys. 90% of these guys never went through a strike or a work stoppage. They don't know the blood, sweat, and tears that has been spent on what these guys are making. All we wanted was a piece of the pie." Marvin Miller, Kurt Flood, on up. And he's saying, "My career started out in his first year on a strike in 1972, and it ended in his last year in 94 when we lost the World Series, when it was washed away, and that should have never happened. We fought for everything the players are getting. So let me tell Bryce Harper something. Go look at the history, figure it out, and quit acting like a fool." And you know what? You could look at things, a couple ways, but there's a lot of truth in what Goose Gossage said in those words, because players of your era kind of paved the way for the players of today.
True, and players of the era before us had to pave the way for us to even have a union. So it wasn't just us guys there; it was the people before us, and we never forgot that. And I know Mickey Mantle was making $100,000, and he was the highest paid player until Bobby Mercer, I think, in 1970, got a contract a little higher than that. But I know Mickey, the way he faced things with the public, he wasn't bitter at the guys behind him who were getting $200,000 if they got 20 innings or if they pitched 200 innings or whatever it was. He just said, he was happy with what he got, and if Mickey Mantle was happy with what he got, and who knows what he would have gotten nowadays. But if he was happy, then I can be happy. So it really kind of took the pressure off of me during my years when, it could have been better, but it sure was good just being there.
Another thing that Gossage mentioned was the kids, the pitchers are coddled. He said, they're protected, these kids. The first thing a pitcher does is when he comes off the mound, how many pitches do I have? How many pitches do I have? He said, if I had asked that effing question, they would have said, son, get your ass out there on the mound. We'll let you know. We'll come get you. So we'll ask you that question, Fritz. Looking back at your career, not only did we talk about the great ERA and some of the great seasons that you had, in 1970, when you had the 20 wins, you threw 260 innings. And if your arm wasn't tired that year, the next year, 274. My goodness. So what would you say about pitch count, and what advice would you give to kids coming up today to avoid like Tommy John surgery?
Right. Well, I think that all of them are thrown into a mix now, and they look at something on the scoreboard after each pitch called the time clock, the speed clock. And I think that hurts the pitchers individually and as a team. And the name of the game is to win games. And Whitey Ford probably never threw a ball over 90 miles an hour. I might have made it up there a couple of times, but he wouldn't have made the team. He wouldn't have made the majors. I wouldn't have either. Because nowadays they just look at the guns, and if a guy can't throw them 95 miles an hour, they don't even take them because they feel like they can teach him the other pitches. But I love what Goose said. I didn't read the whole article, but I knew if it was from him, it was the truth. And again, I like the truth. And he told it, and he has nothing to hold back. And he's a good guy. But we're happy that the guys are playing. They're making what they're making. Nowadays, I wish I had a little bit of that. I'm sure it would help. But it's just a wonderful game. It's a wonderful time. Even though the game has changed, it is not even the same at all. If you read my book and read maybe a book that comes out this year, I'm telling about what players make and how their lives are. They don't travel as a team anymore. They all have their own limos, and they don't eat together. They're not a team. And speaking of a team, last year I was out to see the Staten Island Yankees and your owner out there, and that felt like a team to me. I would have loved to have been on that team in the minor leagues because it was so together, and that's kind of how we were as Yankees, being not able to be traded, to jump to another team. We had to live with each other, and we did. We were a team, really, and that's another reason I had to change some of the stuff I put in the book, especially about Roy, because when I found out the truth, I wanted it to be known that it was my perspective, and I could have done something about it too. I could have asked him about it, but I didn't, so I have to sit around and be bitter? No, I don't think so anymore. But it's just, I love the Yankees. When does your season start?
The Staten Island Yankees, late June.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to be out there a couple of times because I just loved it out there. Yeah. Sitting there watching these big ships go by, and they look like towns moving past the stadium. It's just thrilling.
It's a beautiful, beautiful venue. Jane Rogers is the general manager. She's a friend of the show. She's been on a number of times, and we look forward. We'll look forward to meeting up with you in person down there. And we're going to ask you for your opinion on another thing that Goose weighed in on. We'll go over to G7. We'll go over to our next graphic. He had a big time problem with Bautista, where the way he threw that bat. What do you think? Is that expressing joy, or is he going over the line, in your opinion?
I saw that replay, and you got to know the person, which I don't. So some of the guys were real hot dogs, and some of them weren't. That happened to them. They were just so much into it. So I don't know the player as well, but come on, it's a fun game. It's a sport. When they did that to us as pitchers, we of course had to hit them next time up, but that was a different era. But it needs some entertainment like that. I think it's good for the game, really.
Well, you have an interesting take on it. Like you said, you're old school, but you're also you have a youthful kind of exuberance about it also, because it's a game for kids. We still have that graphic up, and I'm going to tell the guys in the control room to leave it up. I'm going to tell you what I had the problem with on that, Fritz.
Okay.
The people, our viewers, are watching it. Okay, now Bautista hits the home run, and our viewers are seeing. In the background is his dugout. They're jumping out of the dugout. They're jumping for joy, arms up high. He threw that bat in the direction of the Texas dugout. That's what I got a problem with in that, you know what I mean? It's almost like the pitcher coming off the mound. You know what, Fritz? If you strike out Harmon Killebrew and you're pumped up, and you're gonna, let's say, kind of, pump your fist, I think there's a difference between pumping your fist and staring into your own dugout and pumping your fist and staring into their dugout, the Minnesota dugout. Is that a fair comment?
Oh, absolutely. And those kind of players like Killebrew and especially Mantle, they never wanted to show up anybody. They were just happy to be there, and they would never do that. But there's other people who would and do. So everybody's a little bit different, and you got to take them for what they're worth. And I don't know Bautista, so I can't really give you a full comment on it.
Yeah, but that's a good point. You know what? You mentioned Mickey. We'll go over to our next graphic if we can. There's a picture of you and Mickey and Mrs. Babe Ruth between you. And man, that Mickey. I mean, that was he was probably the only guy I ever idolized as a kid. As you get older, you tend not to idolize as much as when you're a little kid. But I mean, I idolized Mickey Mantle growing up, and the one thing that I did was the way he handled himself when he hit a home run. He almost was embarrassed. He runs around the bases with his head down. You know what I mean? He had that little limp about him and everything like that. But that's what I find so endearing, about him, that he was as great as he was. He did a 500-foot home run, and he wanted to get around the bases and back in the dugout.
Right. No, and that's Mickey, and I miss that guy to this day.
You know what, Fritz, and we thank you, and basically, I was a little bit torn with this because I know when you wrote the book, you mentioned it in the book, and a lot of people, they do know you for what happened in '73. So I'm just going to mention it because you mentioned it in your book. New York Yankees spring training camp in Fort Lauderdale. Pitcher Mike Kekich and Fritz Peterson announced that they had swapped wives, 2 children apiece, and even family dogs. And for the record, Kekich had a terrier and Peterson had a poodle. So that's factually correct. But Fritz, I mean, you do know, with even by today's standards, and you would have blown up the internet and Twitter,
bizarre even by today's standards.
Twitter would have crashed. So I'm only going to ask you one question, even though I could probably ask you a million. And I'm going to phrase it in terms of a Yankeeism. And Yogi Berra was once asked about his life, and he said, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again. So I ask you, when you reflect back, it's 40 some odd years ago, if you had to do it again, would you do it again? It's the only question I have.
Absolutely. And I don't advocate doing that, but it just happened with us. And I'm still married. I'm waiting for my wife to meet me in a half hour. We're going to a little pub like we do every night. And our honeymoon never wore off, and I hope it never does.
And one thing, also ask you: are they making a movie? Did we hear? Is that being green-lighted, or?
Yeah, they're on it. They hired a producer or a director by the name of Jay Roach, and it looks like Ben and Matt will be co-producers on this instead of they were going to be in it. I think they got too old waiting for it to start. Yeah, but whatever it is, it's going to be fun seeing who my new wife is.
And Fritz, thank you for a few minutes. Again, we're going to tell everybody, go over to Amazon. Yeah. When the Yankees were on the Fritz, it's a great read. You'll love it. And then again, send him an email, and he'll answer you back. So once again, Fritz Peterson, thank you so much for taking a few minutes.